In a world where every gesture is scrutinized and every glance analyzed, genuine moments of affection between public figures become treasures that capture hearts across the globe. When Prince William gently wrapped his protective arm around Catherine's shoulders during their recent visit to Scotland, the simple act spoke volumes about their enduring bond and the quiet strength that has defined their relationship for over 2 decades. This wasn't just another royal engagement or carefully orchestrated photo opportunity. This was a glimpse into the authentic connection between two people who have weathered storms, celebrated triumphs, and built a life together while carrying the weight of a nation's expectations on their shoulders. The Scottish Highlands have always held special significance for the royal family, but on this particular crisp autumn morning, they would witness something extraordinary. As hundreds of enthusiastic fans gathered in the ancient streets of St. Andrews, the very place where William and Catherine's love story began as university students, nobody could have predicted that a spontaneous moment of tenderness would remind the world why this royal couple continues to capture imaginations and inspire hope. What unfolded over the course of that remarkable day would reveal the true essence of their partnership and demonstrate how genuine love can flourish even under the most intense public scrutiny. This is the story of that unforgettable day in Scotland, where duty met devotion, where protocol gave way to pure emotion, and where a simple embrace became a symbol of enduring love that transcended royal titles and public expectations. The morning mist clung to the Scottish Highlands like a gentle embrace, as Prince William and Catherine prepared for what would become one of their most memorable public appearances. The royal couple had arrived in Scotland the evening before, staying at a private residence nestled among the rolling hills that had witnessed centuries of history. As Catherine stood by the window of their temporary quarters, watching the sun slowly burn through the morning fog, she couldn't help but smile at the familiar landscape that held such deep meaning for both of them. William emerged from the adjoining room, adjusting his navy blue suit jacket with the practiced ease of someone who had been dressing for public events his entire life. Yet there was something different about his demeanor this morning. Perhaps it was the return to Scotland, the place where he had spent some of his happiest years as a university student. Or perhaps it was the anticipation of sharing this meaningful location with Catherine once again. Whatever the reason, there was a lightness in his step and a genuine warmth in his eyes that hadn't been seen in recent public appearances. Catherine turned from the window, her own outfit carefully chosen for the day ahead. She wore an elegant emerald green coat that complemented the Scottish landscape perfectly, paired with simple black boots suitable for walking on cobblestone streets. Her hair was styled in loose waves that caught the morning light streaming through the windows. The couple had learned over the years that their clothing choices would be analyzed and discussed by fashion experts and royal watchers around the world. But today felt different somehow. Today felt more personal, more authentic than their usual royal engagements. The drive through the Scottish countryside provided a peaceful interlude before the public events began. William and Catherine sat quietly in the back of their vehicle, hands clasped together as they watched the familiar scenery pass by the windows. The rolling green hills dotted with sheep, the ancient stone walls that marked property boundaries, and the occasional glimpse of a castle in the distance, all served to remind them of their university days when life was simpler and their future together was just beginning to take shape. Their security detail had arrived hours earlier to coordinate with local authorities and ensure that everything would proceed smoothly. The streets of St. Andrews were already showing signs of the excitement to come, with barriers being erected and early arriving fans beginning to stake out the best viewing positions. Local shop owners were putting finishing touches on their displays, knowing that the royal visit would bring welcome attention to their businesses and the historic town. As their convoy approached the outskirts of St. Andrews, Catherine squeezed William's hand and shared a meaningful look with him. This wasn't just another royal engagement for them. This was a return to the place where their love story had truly begun, where they had navigated the challenges of young adulthood together, and where they had learned to balance their private relationship with the growing public interest in their romance. The town of St. Andrews had been preparing for this visit for weeks. Local officials had worked tirelessly to coordinate with the royal protection officers, ensuring that security measures were in place while still allowing for meaningful interaction with the public. The ancient university town, with its medieval streets and stunning coastal views, provided the perfect backdrop for what everyone hoped would be a memorable visit. Local residents had been buzzing with excitement since the visit was announced. Many of them remembered seeing William and Catherine as university students, walking hand in hand through these very streets, completely unaware that they were witnessing the early stages of a romance that would captivate the world. Elderly shopkeepers shared stories of serving the young couple coffee or selling them newspapers, while university professors fondly recalled having the future King of England in their classrooms. The anticipation in the air was palpable as crowds began to gather along the planned route. Families had traveled from across Scotland and beyond for the chance to see the royal couple in person. Children clutched small Union Jack flags while their parents checked their cameras and phones, hoping to capture the perfect moment. There was something special about seeing William and Catherine in Scotland, a sense that this place held deeper meaning for them than many of their other public appearances. As their vehicle finally entered the historic town center, William and Catherine could see the crowds that had gathered to welcome them. The sight of so many smiling faces and enthusiastic supporters reminded them why they had chosen to dedicate their lives to public service. Each person in that crowd represented a connection to the people they served, a reminder of the responsibility they carried and the privilege they had been given to represent the monarchy in the modern era. The royal protection officers began their final preparations as the convoy approached the first stop of the day. Catherine took a deep breath and smoothed her coat one final time, while William straightened his tie and prepared for the wave of attention that would surround them the moment they stepped out of their vehicle. Yet beneath the professional preparation, there was an undercurrent of genuine excitement about returning to this special place together. The historic streets of St. Andrews had been the setting for countless significant moments in their relationship. It was here that they had shared their first kiss, had their first fight, and had made the decision to spend their lives together. Walking these streets again as husband and wife, as the Prince and Princess of Wales, would undoubtedly bring back a flood of memories from their university years. As the convoy came to a stop outside their first engagement, William turned to Catherine one final time. Without words, he reached over and gently adjusted a strand of her hair that had been displaced during the journey. It was a small, intimate gesture that spoke volumes about their relationship and the care they continued to show for each other, even after all these years of marriage and public life. The crowds outside were growing more excited by the minute, with cheers and applause beginning to build as people realized that the royal couple had arrived. Local police officers and security personnel took their positions, creating clear pathways while still allowing for the kind of close interaction that William and Catherine were known for during their public appearances. The stage was set for what would become an unforgettable day in the ancient Scottish town where their love story began. The car doors opened simultaneously, and Prince William and Catherine stepped out onto the cobblestone streets of St. Andrews to a thunderous wave of cheers and applause. The sound was almost overwhelming, echoing off the ancient stone buildings that lined the narrow street. Catherine paused for just a moment, taking in the incredible sight of hundreds of people who had gathered to see them, their faces bright with excitement and genuine affection. William moved instinctively to Catherine's side, his hand briefly touching the small of her back, in a gesture of support and connection that had become second nature to him over their years of marriage. The crowd's enthusiasm was infectious, and both of them found themselves breaking into genuine smiles as they began their walk toward the first group of waiting supporters. An elderly woman named Margaret MacLeod stood at the front of the barrier, clutching a small bouquet of Scottish heather that she had picked from her garden that morning. She had been waiting since dawn for this moment, having traveled from her home in a nearby village with her granddaughter Emma, who was celebrating her 8th birthday. Margaret remembered seeing William and Catherine as university students years ago, and she had followed their relationship and eventual marriage with the devotion of someone who felt personally invested in their happiness. As Catherine approached, Margaret held out the bouquet with trembling hands. Catherine accepted the flowers with genuine gratitude, leaning forward to speak quietly with the elderly woman about her journey to see them. The conversation lasted only a few moments, but Margaret would later tell everyone who would listen that Catherine had asked about her granddaughter's birthday and had insisted on speaking directly with young Emma. Meanwhile, William had stopped to chat with a group of university students who reminded him so vividly of his own time in St. Andrews. They peppered him with questions about his studies, his favorite professors, and what it had been like to live a relatively normal student life. William answered each question thoughtfully, clearly enjoying the opportunity to reminisce about those formative years when he had been able to experience something approaching an ordinary young adulthood. A young man named David Thompson, who was studying history at the university, boldly asked William about his favorite memories from St. Andrews. William's eyes lit up as he shared stories about late-night study sessions in the library, friendly football matches with fellow students, and the simple pleasure of being able to walk through the town without the level of security that now surrounded every public appearance. Catherine had moved on to a family with 3 young children, all dressed in their finest clothes for the royal visit. The youngest, a little girl named Sophie, who couldn't have been more than 4 years old, had prepared a hand-drawn picture of William and Catherine that she wanted to present to them. Catherine crouched down to Sophie's level, accepting the artwork with the kind of genuine enthusiasm that made the little girl beam with pride. The picture showed 2 stick figures wearing crowns, holding hands in front of what was clearly meant to be a castle. Sophie had used every crayon in her possession, creating a riot of colors that somehow perfectly captured the joy and excitement of the moment. Catherine carefully folded the picture and tucked it into her purse, promising Sophie that she would treasure it forever. As the royal couple continued along the barrier, their genuine interactions with the crowd began to create a ripple effect of warmth and connection. People who had initially been content to simply catch a glimpse of them found themselves drawn into conversations, sharing personal stories and expressing their admiration for the work that William and Catherine did on behalf of various charitable causes. A middle-aged teacher named James Morrison had brought his entire class of 10-year-olds to see the royal couple, having spent weeks preparing them for this moment by teaching them about the history of the monarchy and the role that William and Catherine played in modern Britain. When Catherine stopped to speak with the children, James was amazed by how naturally she connected with them, asking about their favorite subjects and encouraging them to work hard in school. One of James's students, a shy girl named Lucy, had been too nervous to say anything when Catherine first approached. But when Catherine noticed Lucy hanging back from the group, she made a special effort to include her in the conversation. Catherine asked Lucy about her favorite books, and when Lucy whispered that she loved stories about princesses, Catherine smiled and told her that the best princesses were the ones who worked hard to help other people. The interaction with Lucy created a moment of pure magic that seemed to encapsulate everything that made William and Catherine so beloved by the public. Here was a future queen taking time from her busy schedule to encourage a shy child, treating her with the same respect and attention that she would give to any dignitary or official. It was exactly the kind of authentic, caring behavior that had endeared them to people around the world. As they continued their walkabout, William and Catherine began to fall into the natural rhythm that had developed over years of joint public appearances. They would occasionally cross paths, sharing quick smiles and brief touches that reminded everyone watching that they were not just royal colleagues but genuine partners who clearly enjoyed each other's company. A local photographer named Robert Mackenzie, who had been documenting royal visits to Scotland for over 20 years, found himself focusing his camera on these small moments of connection between the couple. He had photographed many royal visitors over the years, but there was something special about the way William and Catherine interacted with each other and with the public that made his job both challenging and rewarding. The crowd had grown larger as word spread through the town that the royal couple had arrived. Social media posts began circulating with photos and videos of their interactions, creating an even larger audience for what was becoming an extraordinary public appearance. Local businesses along the route reported customers streaming in to buy souvenirs and refreshments while keeping one eye on the street for a chance to catch a glimpse of William and Catherine. A group of elderly men who had served in the military stood proudly in their dress uniforms, medals gleaming in the morning sunlight. When William approached them, the conversation naturally turned to their service and sacrifice. William listened intently as they shared stories from their time in the armed forces, clearly moved by their dedication, and proud of his own military background that allowed him to connect with them on a personal level. Catherine, meanwhile, had encountered a young mother struggling to manage an energetic toddler while also trying to take photos of the royal visit. Without hesitation, Catherine offered to hold the child for a moment so the mother could capture some memories of the day. The toddler, rather than being intimidated by meeting a member of the royal family, immediately began playing with Catherine's pearl earrings, causing everyone nearby to laugh at the perfectly natural interaction. As the morning progressed, it became clear that this was developing into something much more than a routine royal engagement. The genuine warmth and connection between William, Catherine, and the people they were meeting was creating an atmosphere of celebration and community that seemed to energize everyone present. The ancient streets of St. Andrews were witnessing something truly special, a reminder of why the monarchy continued to hold such meaning for so many people. As Prince William and Catherine continued their walkabout through the historic streets of St. Andrews, the atmosphere around them seemed to shift into something almost magical. The morning sun had burned away the last of the mist, casting everything in a golden light that made the ancient stone buildings glow with warmth. The crowd had settled into a comfortable rhythm, with people taking turns to approach the barrier for their brief moment of interaction with the royal couple. Catherine was deep in conversation with a local artist named Helen Stewart, who had brought a small watercolor painting of the famous St. Andrew's Cathedral as a gift. Helen had spent weeks perfecting the piece, hoping for exactly this opportunity to present it to the princess. As Catherine admired the delicate brushwork and asked thoughtful questions about Helen's technique, William finished his conversation with a group of local business owners and began walking toward his wife. The crowd around them seemed to sense that something special was about to happen. Parents lifted children onto their shoulders for better views, while photographers adjusted their positions to capture whatever moment was developing. There was an almost electric anticipation in the air, though no one could have predicted what would unfold next. William approached Catherine from behind, and she turned slightly as she felt his presence beside her. She was still holding Helen's watercolor, examining the intricate details of the cathedral spires, when a sudden gust of Scottish wind caught her off guard. The breeze, which had been gentle all morning, suddenly picked up strength, causing Catherine's hair to whip across her face and the painting in her hands to flutter precariously. Without thinking, William stepped closer to Catherine, his body naturally providing a windbreak for both her and the precious artwork she was holding. His left arm came up and around her shoulders in a protective gesture that seemed as natural as breathing. It wasn't a calculated move for the cameras or a staged moment for public consumption. It was simply a husband protecting his wife from an unexpected gust of wind. The crowd's reaction was immediate and heartfelt. A collective sigh of appreciation rippled through the assembled supporters, followed by spontaneous applause. Here was the future King of England, in front of hundreds of people and countless cameras, simply taking care of his wife in the most natural way possible. The gesture spoke volumes about their relationship and the genuine affection that had sustained them through more than a decade of marriage. Catherine looked up at William with a smile that lit up her entire face. In that moment, surrounded by crowds and official duties, she could have been any woman being protected and cherished by her husband. The arm around her shoulders provided not just physical protection from the wind, but a reminder of the emotional support that had carried them through years of public scrutiny and private challenges. Helen Stewart, still holding her painting, found herself with tears in her eyes as she witnessed this spontaneous display of marital love. As an artist, she had spent years trying to capture emotion and connection in her work, but here in front of her was something that transcended any artistic representation. This was real love, displayed without artifice or performance, made all the more moving because it happened in such a public setting. The photographers in the crowd began clicking rapidly, knowing they were witnessing something genuinely special. This wasn't a posed portrait or a staged photo opportunity. This was an authentic moment of human connection that happened to involve two of the most photographed people in the world. The images would later appear on front pages around the globe, but in that moment, everyone present understood they were witnessing something much more significant than a simple photo opportunity. Young Emma MacLeod, who had celebrated her 8th birthday by coming to see the royal couple, tugged on her grandmother's coat and whispered, "Granny, they really do love each other, don't they?" Margaret MacLeod, who had lived through enough decades to recognize genuine affection when she saw it, nodded and pulled her granddaughter closer. "Yes, dear," she whispered back. "They really do." William kept his arm around Catherine as she carefully handed the watercolor back to Helen with both hands, making sure the wind wouldn't damage the artist's careful work. Catherine's voice was warm with emotion as she thanked Helen for the beautiful gift, promising that it would find a special place in their private collection. The interaction had been extended by the need to protect the artwork from the wind, creating a longer moment of connection that benefited everyone involved. A local journalist named Sarah McPherson, who had covered royal visits for the past 15 years, found herself putting down her notebook as she watched the scene unfold. She had reported on countless royal engagements, analyzing every gesture and comment for deeper meaning. But this moment required no analysis or interpretation. It was simply beautiful in its honesty and spontaneity. The wind eventually calmed, but William's arm remained around Catherine's shoulders as they prepared to move on to the next group of supporters. The natural ease with which they maintained this physical connection, even in such a public setting, spoke to the comfort and security they had found in each other over their years together. It was clear that for them, showing affection wasn't something that needed to be hidden or reserved for private moments. A teenage couple, Jack and Meghan, who had traveled from Edinburgh to see the royal visit, found themselves holding hands a little tighter as they watched William and Catherine. Jack had been hesitant about making the trip, questioning whether seeing the royal couple was worth the early morning drive and the long wait in the crowds. But watching this genuine display of love and partnership made him understand why so many people found inspiration in William and Catherine's relationship. Meghan squeezed Jack's hand and smiled up at him, the royal couple's example of public affection making her feel more comfortable about showing her own feelings. "I hope we're still like that when we've been together as long as they have," she whispered to Jack, who nodded in agreement, suddenly understanding what his girlfriend saw in this royal couple that had captured so many hearts around the world. The moment continued to resonate through the crowd as William and Catherine moved on to the next section of supporters. People turned to their neighbors, sharing comments about what they had just witnessed. Strangers found themselves in conversations about love, commitment, and the challenge of maintaining authentic relationships under public scrutiny. The royal couple had inadvertently created a moment of human connection that extended far beyond their immediate interaction. Local police sergeant Robert McDougall, who had been assigned to crowd control for the event, found himself smiling as he watched the public reaction to that simple gesture. In his 20 years of law enforcement, he had worked security for numerous high-profile events, but he had never seen a crowd respond with such genuine warmth and approval to something so unscripted and natural. As William and Catherine continued their engagement, the arm around Catherine's shoulders remained, becoming a symbol of partnership that would define not just that moment, but the entire visit to St. Andrews. It was a reminder that even in the most public of lives, authentic love and genuine care could still flourish and inspire others to believe in the possibility of lasting happiness. The simple gesture of William's protective arm around Catherine began to create waves of reaction that extended far beyond the immediate crowd gathered on the streets of St. Andrews. As news of the touching moment spread through social media and traditional news outlets, people around the world found themselves drawn to the genuine display of affection between the royal couple. In the crowd itself, the atmosphere had shifted to something even more warm and celebratory. Parents found themselves explaining to their children about the importance of showing care for the people we love, using William and Catherine as an example of how strong relationships are built on mutual support and protection. The royal couple had unknowingly provided a masterclass in partnership that resonated across generations. An elderly gentleman named Thomas Campbell, who had been married to his wife Margaret for 57 years, found his eyes misting over as he watched William and Catherine continue their walkabout with William's arms still protectively around his wife. Thomas turned to Margaret and quietly took her hand, remembering their own early years together, when every gesture of protection and care had felt monumentally important. Margaret Campbell squeezed her husband's weathered hand and smiled up at him with the same affection she had shown as a young bride. "They remind me of us when we were young," she whispered to Thomas, who nodded in agreement. The royal couple's display of genuine affection had transported them back to their own early days of marriage, when every small gesture had carried the weight of profound love and commitment. Catherine, still feeling the comfort and security of William's arm around her shoulders, found herself engaging even more deeply with the people they encountered. There was something about feeling so completely supported and protected that allowed her to be even more open and genuine in her interactions. A young mother named Jennifer Walsh approached the barrier with her infant son, hoping for just a moment of eye contact with the princess. When Catherine stopped to admire the baby, Jennifer was struck by the genuine warmth and interest in Catherine's voice as she asked about the child's age and temperament. The protective presence of William beside his wife seemed to create a bubble of intimacy that made even these brief public interactions feel more personal and meaningful. Jennifer would later tell friends that Catherine had seemed like any loving aunt admiring a friend's new baby, rather than a future queen fulfilling royal duties. The local media representatives who were covering the event began to notice how the crowd's energy had elevated since that moment of wind-swept affection. Reporter Duncan MacLeod, who had covered royal visits for the past decade, found himself struggling to maintain professional objectivity as he witnessed the genuine connection between William, Catherine, and the people who had come to see them. Duncan began crafting his report in his mind, knowing that this visit was developing into something far more significant than a routine royal engagement. The spontaneous moment of husbandly protection had revealed something authentic about the royal couple that would resonate with readers far beyond Scotland. This was exactly the kind of genuine humanity that people craved in their public figures. A group of university students who were studying at St. Andrews following in William and Catherine's footsteps found themselves particularly moved by what they were witnessing. Sarah Bennett, a second-year history student, had initially come to see the royal couple out of curiosity about the university's most famous alumni, but watching their genuine interaction with the public and with each other had given her a new appreciation for the challenges of maintaining authentic relationships under intense scrutiny. Sarah's friend Michael Thompson, who was studying psychology, found himself analyzing the body language between William and Catherine with professional interest. The way William had instinctively moved to protect Catherine, and the way she had naturally leaned into his support, spoke to a level of trust and connection that couldn't be manufactured or performed. These were the actions of two people who had genuinely built a life together based on mutual care and respect. As the royal couple moved through different sections of the crowd, the protective arm around Catherine's shoulders became a constant that people began to anticipate and appreciate. Children pointed it out to their parents. Teenagers posted about it on social media, and older adults nodded with approval at seeing such a positive example of marriage in the public eye. Local shopkeeper Patricia Morrison, who had closed her bakery for the morning to see the royal visit, found herself thinking about her own daughter's upcoming wedding. Watching William and Catherine had reminded her of all the advice she wanted to give her daughter about building a strong marriage based on mutual support and genuine affection. The royal couple was providing a real-time demonstration of how successful partnerships weather all kinds of storms by maintaining their fundamental connection to each other. Patricia's neighbor, retired teacher Andrew Mackenzie, had initially been skeptical about taking time from his morning routine to see what he assumed would be a typical royal walkabout. But watching the genuine interaction between William and Catherine and seeing how their obvious affection for each other had energized the entire crowd made him understand why so many people found inspiration in their relationship. The photographers covering the event were having difficulty choosing which shots to focus on because every interaction seemed to capture something meaningful about the royal couple's connection to each other and to the public. Professional photographer Lisa Stewart, who had covered numerous royal events, found herself struggling with an embarrassment of riches as William and Catherine continued to provide moment after moment of genuine emotion and connection. Lisa realized that she was witnessing something that would likely be remembered as one of the most authentic royal engagements in recent memory. The combination of the meaningful location, the enthusiastic crowd, and most importantly, the genuine affection between William and Catherine was creating a perfect storm of positive public relations that couldn't have been planned or orchestrated. A young father named Colin MacLeod, who had brought his 5-year-old daughter Emma to see her first royal visit, found himself explaining to her why the way William was taking care of Catherine was so special. Emma listened seriously as her father talked about how people who love each other always try to protect and support one another, whether they're regular families or members of the royal family. Emma nodded solemnly and announced that when she grew up, she wanted to marry someone who would protect her from the wind, just like Prince William was protecting Princess Catherine. Colin smiled and hugged his daughter, grateful for the positive example of marriage and partnership that the royal couple was providing for the next generation. The local clergy who were present for the royal visit found themselves particularly moved by the display of genuine marital love. Reverend James McPherson, who had performed hundreds of wedding ceremonies over his 40-year career, recognized in William and Catherine's interaction the kind of deep partnership that he always hoped to see develop in the couples he married. Reverend McPherson made a mental note to include this royal example in his next sermon about the importance of mutual support and protection in marriage. Seeing such a positive model of Christian marriage displayed so publicly and authentically provided him with a powerful illustration of how faith and love could work together to create lasting partnerships, even under the most challenging circumstances. As the morning progressed into afternoon, the royal visit to St. Andrews was drawing to a close, but the impact of William's gentle, protective gesture continued to resonate through every interaction that followed. The arm around Catherine's shoulders had become more than just a moment of husbandly care. It had evolved into a symbol of the genuine partnership that defined their relationship and their approach to royal duties. Catherine found herself reflecting on how natural and right it felt to have William's support, both physical and emotional, as they navigated the intense attention of the crowd. In the early days of their relationship, she had sometimes felt overwhelmed by the public scrutiny that came with dating the future king. But moments like this reminded her of how far they had both come in learning to maintain their authentic connection even in the most public settings. The final stop of their visit was at the University Chapel, where they had attended services as students. The significance of returning to this sacred space together, as husband and wife, as the Prince and Princess of Wales, was not lost on either of them. As they walked up the familiar stone steps, William's arm still protectively around Catherine, they both felt the weight of how much their lives had changed since their student days. Inside the chapel, they were greeted by current university officials and a small group of faculty members who remembered them from their student years. Professor Elizabeth Morrison, who had taught William in a constitutional history course, found herself marveling at the young man she had once known transformed into a confident future king, still clearly devoted to the woman who had captured his heart during those formative university years. The chapel service was brief but deeply meaningful, with prayers offered for their continued service to the nation and for the well-being of their family. As they sat in the front pew, Catherine felt William's hand find hers, their fingers intertwining in a gesture of unity that had sustained them through years of public and private challenges. The simple human connection of holding hands in that sacred space felt like a renewal of the vows they had made to each other and to their roles in service to others. When they emerged from the chapel, the crowd that had gathered outside was even larger than before. Word had spread throughout the town and beyond about the warmth and authenticity of the royal couple's interactions throughout the day. People who had initially missed their chance to see William and Catherine had rushed to this final location, hoping for one last glimpse of the couple who had provided such a powerful example of lasting love and partnership. The final walkabout was conducted in the golden afternoon light that made the ancient university buildings glow with an almost ethereal beauty. William and Catherine moved through the crowd with the practiced ease of two people who had learned to work together as a team, each complementing the other's strengths and providing support when needed. The protective arm that had defined the morning's interactions remained a constant, creating a visual symbol of their unshakable bond. A local historian named Robert MacLeod, who had been documenting the university's connection to the royal family, found himself struggling to find adequate words to describe what he had witnessed. This wasn't just a routine royal visit. It was a homecoming for two people who had found love in this very place, and who continued to honor that love through their public service and their devotion to each other. As the afternoon drew to a close and it came time for William and Catherine to depart, the crowd began singing Auld Lang Syne in voices that carried across the ancient stone buildings and out over the North Sea. The haunting melody, combined with the visible emotion on both William and Catherine's faces, created a moment of pure Scottish magic that would be remembered by everyone present for the rest of their lives. Catherine felt tears prick her eyes as she listened to the beautiful tribute from the people who had welcomed them so warmly throughout the day. William's arm tightened around her shoulders, providing the emotional support she needed to maintain her composure while still allowing her to feel the full impact of the moment. Together, they waved farewell to the crowd, their gratitude evident in every gesture. The journey back to their temporary residence was conducted in comfortable silence, both William and Catherine processing the extraordinary day they had shared. The car wound through the Scottish countryside as the sun began to set, painting the hills in shades of gold and purple that seemed to reflect the warmth and beauty of the day's experiences. Back in St. Andrews, the crowds began to disperse, but the conversations about what they had witnessed continued long into the evening. In pubs and cafes throughout the town, people shared their personal encounters with the royal couple, and marveled at the genuine affection they had observed between William and Catherine. The protective arm around Catherine's shoulders had become a touchstone for discussions about love, commitment, and the possibility of maintaining authentic relationships, even under intense public scrutiny. Local photographer Robert Mackenzie spent the evening reviewing the hundreds of photos he had taken throughout the day. As he scrolled through image after image of William and Catherine interacting with the crowd, he was struck by how that single gesture of protection had somehow elevated every subsequent interaction. The visible bond between the royal couple had created an atmosphere of warmth and authenticity that had transformed a routine royal visit into something truly special. Social media exploded with posts about the day's events, with the image of William's protective arm around Catherine being shared thousands of times within hours. People from around the world commented on the genuine love visible between the royal couple, with many sharing their own stories of protective gestures from their partners and spouses. The royal couple had inadvertently started a global conversation about the importance of showing care and affection in relationships. News outlets struggled to find adequate superlatives to describe what had transpired in St. Andrews. Royal correspondents who had covered hundreds of similar events found themselves searching for new ways to convey the exceptional warmth and authenticity that had characterized every moment of the visit. The consensus was unanimous that this had been something far beyond a typical royal engagement. In their private quarters that evening, William and Catherine reflected on the day's events over a quiet dinner. They both acknowledged how special it had felt to return to St. Andrews together, to share that meaningful place with each other once again as mature adults who had built a life and a family together. The protective gesture that had defined the day's media coverage felt natural and unremarkable to them, simply the way they had always taken care of each other. Catherine smiled as she remembered the faces in the crowd, the genuine warmth and enthusiasm of the people who had come to see them. William reached across the dinner table and took her hand, the same gesture of connection and support that had characterized their entire day together. They both understood that they had experienced something extraordinary, a perfect convergence of meaningful location, enthusiastic public support, and authentic personal connection. As they prepared for bed that evening, both William and Catherine knew that they would remember this day for the rest of their lives, not because of the official engagements or the media attention, but because of the reminder it had provided of why their relationship continued to inspire others, and how their genuine partnership had become a source of strength that sustained them through all aspects of their public and private lives. The sweet moment in Scotland would be remembered not just as a photograph or a news story, but as a testament to the power of authentic love to inspire hope and connection across all boundaries of class, nationality, and circumstance. In wrapping his arm around Catherine, William had demonstrated that even in the most public of lives, genuine care and protection could flourish and provide a beacon of hope for anyone seeking to build lasting, meaningful relationships.